finally, Joy told me to go get it looked at. And so, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, I went to a very, very well-respected, renowned, actually world-renowned dermatologist that happens to be here in Edmonton, Alberta. And I don't know why he picked Edmonton. He could be anywhere, but he is a major dude. Anyway, he pulled my ear back, said, yeah, that's cancer. Can we do a biopsy right now? So he did, and in the process of biopsy, he hoped was a big enough chunk out to get it all, right? And said that they'd get back to me with biopsy results in 3 or 4 weeks. So 3, 4 weeks went by, and it was not obviously this kind of bandage. It was smaller. But anyway, 3 or 4 weeks went by, and in the 5th week, and I thought, maybe I'm in the clear. But sure enough, about the middle of the next week, they called me and said, no, we didn't get it all. We need to schedule a thing. And so it took me a time. I had some travel planned and some other stuff. But today was the day. And so they did something called Mohs, M-O-H-S, surgery, which is, I guess, named after the dude that created it. And it's where they cut it out. They go in, they freeze your ear and numb it or freeze it. We call it freezing up here. But anyway, and then cut it all out. And then they have you sit there while you go, while they go test it and look at it under a microscope and in the lab and all that jazz. But anyway, so they came back for a second time, said, no, we got to cut a little more. And I'm like, okay, it's already been there an hour and a half or two. And he said, there's two kinds. It's basal cell, which is the best kind to have, thank goodness. And he said, there's two kinds. One kind that sits on top, and you can see it easily and how big it is, and the other that goes down in, and mine was the second kind, and he said it's bigger. So it ended up, the area of cut ended up being about the size of a big silver dollar. If you remember that size in the U.S., and in Canada, it's a toonie. Call it a toonie, which is a $2 coin. And it was big enough and deep enough that they had to graft some skin. So then they had to cut a piece of skin out and graft it in there. So they wanted to do that close. So they cut it out from right here in front of the ear, etc. Now, I'm not telling you this to interest you because you're interested in my health or my cancer diagnosis or anything else. I'm going to be fine. But it was a lot interesting, a lot bigger. It was interesting and a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. And now that the numbing or the freezing's worn off, my ear throbs like mad, and they told me it would. But here's the thing. Today I wanted to talk about we do not create alone. Like, I don't create this alone, this healing and this discovery and all of the stuff. The dude that invented this kind of microsurgery and this doctor that's highly trained and well-respected and 2 or 3 staff people that were there in and out with different things. And I've got a follow-up appointment every week now for 4 weeks. And in 1 week, the donor site stitches come out, and in 4 weeks, they'll check the bandage every week and so forth. The interesting piece about that is it's radically changed my schedule. I can't shower now. I can't get this wet at all for those 4 weeks. And so it changes a bunch of things. And when we create, like agency, we talked so much about that yesterday. It doesn't mean isolation. We choose, we act, we build, we heal, and we become in relationship with divine love, guidance, invitation, other people, physical reality, like this thing it inserted itself in my life right now, and power beyond our own. Sovereignty isn't the fantasy that we need nobody. It is the ability to deliberately, gratefully, and responsibly participate in a creation a lot larger than us. So I just have a new book coming out in the next 3 weeks called The Sovereign Architect. And that is what I am, the sovereign architect. Okay? And the way I think about it is design, build, and live your ultimate life. And it is possible not just for me, but for everyone. And that's the foundation for the 300 million people I'm training in the WIPOS, your worth, identity, possibility, ownership, and sovereignty. It is foundational to, the ultimate life I talk about, purpose, prosperity, and joy. But I want you to think about your own life. Have you designed it? Or are you living just whatever shows up for you? Now, external things happen like this ear thing, right? But we still design life. I don't, even though my plans have to change, I'm going to cancel a trip I was going on because I didn't really think it was going to be this severe, and that's okay. So sometimes, I'm not here to give some glamorous demonstration of spiritual mastery. This is it. Bandage, soreness, changed plans, and the humbling realization that my ear has developed its own production calendar. But this is the perfect way to think about not creating alone. We talked about divine mind not being neutral, and I use divine mind because that's one phrase. God is not neutral. He's individual, intentional, and individual. Directional. We don't live and create inside an indifferent universe. We create inside a living, loving, purposeful reality that knows us individually and calls us to truth, growth, love, and service. And that is so cool. But I want to take it today out of the clouds and put it right here on the side of my head. I have agency. I chose the thing, to have it examined. I chose the treatment. I showed up. I followed instructions. I'm going to make choices during this recovery. But I didn't perform the surgery. I can't command the tissue to heal by giving it a stern motivational speech. I can't personally sterilize the universe. I cannot insist that my body obey my preferred schedule because I have a live to do and several books in production. Like I'm participating in healing. I'm obviously not producing it alone, and that applies to almost everything. So I talk a lot about sovereignty, the sovereign architect. Design, build, and live your ultimate life. I stand by it. I love it. I'm doing it. I'm living it. And sometimes we hear the words or use the word sovereignty and agency and ownership and conscious creation and turn them into a strange fantasy of like total self-sufficiency. I create my reality, which I teach and believe, somehow then becomes I should need no one, depend on nothing, and control every result. And that's not sovereignty. That's a nervous breakdown wearing a crown. Sovereignty doesn't mean you become a one-person civilization. Doesn't mean I grow my own food, manufacture my own antibiotics, build my own roads, compose my own operating system, extract my own tooth, and perform minor surgery in the bathroom because asking for help would compromise my divine agency. Please don't do that. Sovereignty really means that we govern our choices. It means we bring intention, truth, responsibility, and alignment in our participation. So think about how many other people help me or are helping me in this thing. The sheet I got when I came home said, don't be alone the first 24 hours and don't drive. So I'm dependent on joy. Ask me who I was going to have, who was picking me up. I'm not, omnipotent or omniscient or anything like that. But it does mean that in the act of all those participation things, that I take full responsibility, awareness about how I show up and how I participate. So the sovereignty I exercise is over my own choices, my own behavior, my own love that I give, my own receiving of love from my wife to pick me up and care from these amazing people. So I own my life, absolutely, but I'm not claiming I'm the sole author of every circumstance. Anyone that's ever been in an accident where something bad happened just accidentally, or where someone else was drunk or didn't pay attention, realizes we don't control every circumstance. We can still, in every case, choose powerfully while recognizing our dependence and sometimes our helplessness in given situations. So one of the things I talk about in the swamp, I say we're born into, stuffed into living in a swamp of learned helplessness, addiction to mediocrity, and victim mindset. And the world sort of crams us into that box. And here I'm using the word helplessness, dependence. A baby is helpless. I am sitting in that chair under the surgeon's knife. I am helpless. Now, I chose to be there. I choose to listen and read the instructions carefully and follow them so I can co-create this healing. His skill, the instructions, regular visits, my following those instructions. I can also choose how it affects me. So right now, I've got 4 weeks wearing this ridiculous bandage with my ear throbbing like crazy because they cut out the cancer. And how I show up in those 4 weeks is all up to me. I can sleep a lot, and I will if I need to, or I can just go forward and create what I was going to create the best I can. And I choose to do that intentionally because I love you, and I love every person with whom I have the honor and privilege of coming into contact. That's why I love having people on the show so much. My podcast, my LA Talk radio show, I love guests. I love people who have stories to tell, stories of their own resilience and struggling and choices and growth. And, you know, the downs and the ups, they are the substance of our human experience. And even in that moment when I'm interviewing somebody, and I invite you, if you've got a story to tell, yourultimatelifepodcast.com, use the contact form. I want to have you on the podcast. Anyone that's about doing good in the world, anyone that is about creating better conditions, raising the consciousness, use all the woo-woo words. I want to hear your story and I want to share it. And in the act of sharing it, we co-create an experience. How fun is that? That's why I love these interviews so much. I get to co-create an experience with this person, often because I interview so many that I don't know even very well. And yet we get to co-create an experience with one goal in mind, to serve you, to love you, to serve the listener, to find a way to encourage, to lift, to bless you. So sometimes we have this fantasy when we talk about sovereignty that there's this, you know, the ideal is the lone creator. Our culture somehow loves this lone genius myth, right? The founder built the company alone. The author wrote the masterpiece alone. The artist created the work alone. The leader saved the organization alone. The rugged individual conquered the mountain alone, preferably while staring moodily into the distance with wind blowing through expensive outerwear. Nonsense. It makes a good poster. Behind every self-made person are teachers, roads, language, tools, customers, family, staff, critics, mistakes, traditions, technologies, workers, ancestors, opportunities, and countless people whose names never appear in the story. Even solitude is supported. The writer sitting alone in the room is using language he did not invent, a computer she did not build, electricity they did not generate, ideas shaped by a lifetime of encounters, and a body kept alive through amazing systems we don't even understand, operating mostly outside conscious control. So you and I, we might create something original, but we didn't create it from nothing. Only God creates like that. The rest of us just rearrange the gifts, and that's okay. Now, I want to come back to my busted ear for a minute. I went and got this cancer surgery voluntarily. It lasted longer, and it was a lot worse than I thought. But nothing grounds the metaphysical stuff like swelling and medical tape. A doctor brought years of education and training and practice and judgment. He's a celebrated, won all kinds of awards, happens to live here in Edmonton. I'm so grateful. Nurses and staff created the environment. Somebody designed the instruments. The nurses were in there getting me all fixed up and everything all done before the doctor ever showed up. Somebody designed the instruments and manufactured the supplies and developed the procedure. It's called MOHS, M-O-H-S. Somebody named Mo probably, did it. Somebody scheduled the appointment. Somebody cleaned the room. My body is now performing healing operations. I can't consciously direct. Joy helps me whenever I make adjustments. She picked me up because I couldn't drive home. My schedule has changed. Other people may carry things I expected to carry. So you might ask yourself, where in all that is agency? It's everywhere. Because my agency is in seeking care. It is in accepting reality. It's in following wise counsel. It's in communicating honestly about pain. It's about changing the schedule instead of arguing with my ear about my business plan. And most of all, it is in choosing not to let this cancer, which is now gone. They said they got it all. Okay, cool. Change anything I think about you or me or my mission of 300 million or myself or the books that I'm writing or the podcasts that I'm doing or the music that I'm doing over there in the recording studio. Like this is just a piece of life and it's fun. I actually love the fact that this happened. I do, because it teaches me patience and love and surrender. I can receive help without turning dependence into humiliation. It is in choosing how I interpret every interruption and what I create inside of it. So my agency doesn't replace the doctor, but it allows me to participate intelligently with the doctor. And it doesn't replace my body, but it does allow me to support my body. I'm going to change my schedule. Big bold letters on the thing, don't, this, and that, and the other. My agency doesn't eliminate the circumstance, but it does govern my response. So here's the thing I want you to take. Interdependence is not weakness. Our need to depend on each other for stuff is not weakness. I love being with you and talking to you. And like I said earlier, if you've got a story you want to share, yourultimatelifepodcast.com, use the contact form. My goal is to reach 300 million people with not just my stories, but yours and yours and yours and yours on purpose. We are interdependent beings, and that's not a design flaw. A baby doesn't survive alone. A family's built through relationship. A business exists because value moves between people. Music requires ears as well as sound. Teaching requires learners, right? Service requires someone to receive it and give it. Forgiveness exists because relationship exists. Love can't even be practiced in total isolation, although learning to love yourself is one of the most important things we need to do. Sometimes we feel like we're ashamed for needing help. We think that somehow means we've failed. And the idea is I should be able to handle this myself. Why? Who made that rule? There's no medal at the end of life for having required the least assistance. Congratulations. You were difficult to help and exhausted yourself unnecessarily. Please accept this tasteful plaque. Are you laughing yet? Strength is not the refusal to receive. It's the capacity to remain truthful inside of receiving, to be grateful, and to give everything you can when you can. Strength is in asking cleanly, choosing wisely, retaining responsibility, and refusing to make helplessness our identity. Dependence becomes unhealthy if we abandon our agency. Independence becomes unhealthy when we deny relationship. Interdependence is a word that Covey used a lot in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it really says, I bring what's mine, you bring what's yours, and together we make cool stuff that was not possible alone. Now, I want to talk a little bit, relate this to yesterday's, and that's about divine mind or the God, the power in the universe, not being neutral. We have to avoid the opposite distortion. Some people use divine help, the idea of it, let go and let God, as an excuse not to act. God will provide. Wonderful. Perhaps God is attempting to provide through the phone call you refuse to make, or the person I will not ask, or the work either one of us might not do, or the door we're too afraid to knock on. Divine guidance is not like, celestial room service. Prayer isn't placing an order. God's not a cosmic vending machine. Relationship to the divine doesn't erase agency. It's part of the design parameters. It's easy to see. Guidance asks for response. An invitation requires movement and answer. Power asks for a willing vessel. Grace does not make effort unnecessary. Grace makes transformation possible. So my experience is that we create with God, not instead of God. We receive, and I can testify to this, direction, love, strength, correction, plenty of that and opportunity, and then we get to pick what we do with them. Sometimes divine help arrives as peace. Sometimes it comes in a person or in an interruption, or it arrives as a truth maybe you didn't want right now. Sometimes it arrives as a door that was closed that prevents you from wandering further into nonsense. Help doesn't always resemble rescue. Sometimes it resembles redirection or strength to deal with what there is. Sometimes we get the idea that we're seeking for guidance or help, and we want the situation resolved or the problem removed, and sometimes it's intelligence or strength to figure out the solution or the next step. Increasingly, I see creation as a conversation. You act, I act, reality answers. You speak, I speak, someone responds. You build a first version, the market teaches you. You write a chapter, the book reveals what it wants to become. One of the most fun things about writing books. You make a plan, maybe, and the body announces surgery has changed the week. You pray and then you listen. You choose and then observe. You move and then adjust. It's not failure or lack of control, it's relationship. The rigid creator might say, everything's got to be exactly like I picture it, or the whole thing's wrong. The creator in relationship says, you know what, I know the direction. I know clearly the intention. I know what I'm committed to serve. I made a declaration now 2 years ago. I'm going to reach 300 million people with WIPOS, your worth, your identity, your possibility, ownership, and sovereignty. The direction and the help that I'm seeking and getting has changed 15 times, but I remain committed to move to that goal. And I remain alive and awake to what the process is teaching me. Your vision, your precious, unique vision needs ownership. But ownership doesn't mean strangling the vision until it obeys your first draft. All of these things are collaborations, sometimes with reality, sometimes with other people, sometimes with resistance, sometimes with divine invitation. We don't control outcomes all the time. This is where we have to tell the truth about this conscious creation stuff. We influence them, but we don't control. We prepare and work toward the outcomes we want, but we build capacity. I'll talk about it in context of my 300 million. I've built capacity, shows, outreach, channels, books, and it depends also on our interaction. That's how I built my coaching practice. That's how I've written 24 books. All of that is interaction. We have to move and change. We focus attention, create offers, develop skill, take action, and then work with reality. You may build a super valuable offer and nobody buys. You may need to change how it's communicated. I might follow medical instructions and still the body's going to heal at the body's pace, not the pace preferred by my calendar. I have to cancel a trip I'm taking because, this is worse and longer than I thought. Okay. The fantasy of control sometimes makes us brittle. And when reality deviates, we collapse. We don't want to do that. And sometimes they start blaming themselves. I'm not manifesting. I must be doing this wrong. Please. You're a divine agent, not the cosmic shipping manager. I'm giving you this here because this is my experience, and I thought it was funny because of this here thing today. So I have one final question I really want to ask you. Is there help that you are refusing? Is there help from others, from the divine, from your own intuition, from love around you? Is there help you are refusing? And before you say no, I want you to sit and think about that. Is there help available to you that you are refusing because you think you must do it alone, or you're not worthy, or any other reason? Are you refusing coaching because you think guidance means you're not capable? Are you refusing medical care because I'm afraid of what I might learn? You know, I waited 2 years before I went to get this looked at. When I asked him what happens, I said, what happens if I don't do anything? Because that was one of the options. They said 3 options: radiation, chemo, surgery right now, or do nothing. And I said, what happens if I do nothing? And they said, oh, you probably lose your ear. Yeah, no, we'll do the surgery today. Right? Are you refusing help sometimes because you don't want to inconvenience anyone? Are you refusing collaboration because you want the credit? Are you refusing cooperation because your identity is attached to already knowing? Man, I was so swamped in that. I thought I had to know everything. And that made me take much longer than it needed to create what I've created now. All these books and clients all over the world, and millions upon millions of views of my shows, my ability to share your message. I invite you one last time, yourultimatelifepodcast.com. If you have a story you want to share, use the contact form. Let's talk. Receiving help requires courage, discernment, boundaries, humility, and we have to admit somebody else might be in possession of something I need. Sometimes we are the help. And people say all the time, well, it's easier for me to give help than to receive it. Well, that's a mistake. When we accept help, we are blessing the other person if it is offered freely and not out of obligation. So we're constantly working together. We're participating in one another's becoming. And that is the key, one of the key pieces I want to leave you. Okay. So I want to close this today by reminding you, you choose, act, build, heal, and become in relationship with people, with your body, with God, with time, and with your tools, and with opportunity and grace. Bring your agency, your sovereignty, your commitment, and bring your gifts, and bring your willingness, and then receive help, instruction, correction, care, love. Receive the fact that someone may carry a piece you can't carry today. An example of that is I couldn't drive home. I either walked or my wife. What a beloved angel. Every time I talk about her, she's an angel. She walks on water. Any of these things, a bandaged ear, a changed schedule, good doctors, people who care for me, people who serve you, people who love you, those all are there, and the choice of to receive them and how we receive them is the key. This is not a loss of sovereignty. That is sovereignty in the real world. We are not creating alone. Thank God.